topic for today is how DNS caching makes your internet faster. Let's first understand a few acronyms and terms. DNS stands for Domain Name System. A domain is the name of a website. A URL, Universal Resource Locator, is a complete web address used to find a particular web page at a website. Basically, the DNS is a directory of names that are matched with numbers. The numbers in this case are IP addresses. Computers need to use numbers to communicate with each other more efficiently, accurately, and safely. So what is DNS caching? As defined by Brad Mitchell at lifewire.com, it's a temporary database maintained by a computer's operating system that contains records of all recent or attempted visits to websites and other internet domains. In other words, a DNS cache is just a memory of recent DNS lookups that your computer quickly refers to figure out how to load a website. The internet relies on the domain name system to maintain an index of all public websites and their corresponding IP addresses. You can think of it as a type of phone book. With a phone book, we don't have to memorize everyone's phone number, thankfully. In the same way, the DNS is used to avoid having to memorize a string of numbers connected with a website's IP address. Example, you type in a URL like lifewire.com, and your web browser asks your router for the IP address. The router has a DNS server address stored, so it asks the DNS server to find the IP address of that host name. The DNS server finds the IP address that belongs to lifewire.com and then is able to understand the website you're asking for and loads the appropriate information. That's how the process works. There are tons of public DNS servers your network can use to speed up the conversion resolution process. It's still quicker to have a local copy or of the phone book, which is where the DNS caches come into play. The DNS cache on your computer attempts to speed up the process even more by handling the name resolution of recently visited addresses before the request is sent out to the internet. There are actually DNS caches at every hierarchy level of the lookup process that ultimately takes your computer to your desired website. Each of those points in the process has a DNS cache for the same reason, which again is to speed up the whole process. A DNS cache can become poisoned or polluted when unauthorized domain names or IP addresses are inserted into it. Occasionally, a DNS cache may become corrupted because of technical glitches or administrative accidents. However, DNS cache poisoning is typically associated with computer viruses or other network attacks that insert invalid DNS entries into the cache. I've had that happen. Poisoning causes client requests to be redirected to the wrong destinations, which are usually malicious websites or pages full of advertisements. This poses a massive problem for popular websites. Example, if an attacker redirects your request for techforsenior.com to a website that looks like Tech for Senior, but really isn't, you might end up with being the victim of a phishing attack. Again, if the techforsenior.com record was poisoned and redirecting you to a strange website, flushing the DNS is a good first step to getting the regular techforsenior.com to work once again. I'll come back to DNS flushing in a moment. A DNS cache doesn't ever flush or reset itself, unfortunately. A user needs to manually execute a flush or make a DNS networking-related configuration change for that to happen. Also, each DNS record has a time-to-live number in seconds associated with it, which tells a DNS cache how long it will be active until flushed away. On a Windows computer, you can see a list of your DNS records in your cache, including their TTL, time to live, by entering ipconfig /display DNS in your Windows search box or at a command prompt. Don't forget that space after ipconfig. Here's what a single page from hundreds looks like on my computer. Now, I have just 3 records out of hundreds or maybe thousands of, since it was last flushed. Well, notice each record has 6 elements: a record name, record type, time to live, TTL, which notice varies. The first one is almost 20,000 seconds, and the second is only 62. And then there's data length, they're all the same, and a couple of other things. Going on. I understand that it's a little more complicated to display the DNS cache on a Mac computer. Consequently, I'd suggest that Mac users consult with Mac experts on how to display the DNS cache. Now back to DNS flushing. Clearing your DNS cache removes all entries and deletes any invalid records as well. Also, it forces your computer to repopulate those addresses the next time you try accessing those websites. These new addresses are taken from the DNS server your network is set up to use. In a Windows or Mac, on both systems, flushing, which is resetting your DNS cache, is way more complex than simply viewing it. You might search for words, if you want to do it, you might search for words, something like instructions flushing DNS for Windows or for Mac computer, whichever you use. A router usually has a DNS cache as well, which is why rebooting a router is often the first best troubleshooting step for router problems. You see, it's all coming together now. For the same reason, you might flush a DNS cache on your computer. You can also reboot your router to clear the DNS entries stored in its temporary memory. Some of you may recall my Tech Talk 19 called A Router Tale from early February, in which I detailed how Linksys tech support resolved a number of issues on my 4-year-old Linksys AC1900 router. Got it working pretty well. Well, that turned out not to be the end of the story. Later, a few small issues began popping up, so I bought an inexpensive GE outlet timer, which turns off the power to my modem and router for 30 minutes at 3 a.m. daily. So far, this appears, I've had it a week, and it appears to have resolved the issues that I was having. So it's a pretty good fix. Most techies will agree. One more thing. If you've been with us here at TFS in recent months, you may recall that our co-host Ron Brown have talking about his orange tree at the place he and his wife Gail have here at Silveridge. Recently, he asked me to strip his tree of oranges. So Ron, you finally get to see a photo of the last 24 oranges on your wonderful navel orange tree. And by the way, that's Joanne, my bride of 60 years. Well, that's my Tech Talk story for today. And I'm really going to be enjoying those oranges and Joanne enjoying them with me. Thanks for watching. Stay safe and have a great day.
And their website is 23andme.com. So what's in a name? Well, where'd they get the name from? Well, there are 23 pairs of chromosomes in the human cell. So they were founded in 2006, and they provide what is called a direct-to-consumer genetic testing service. So they will provide various reports that are obtained from an analyzed saliva sample that details your ancestry, traits, and health-related issues. Now, there's 3 fee-based services offered. The basic one is Ancestry and Traits service. That's $99, and that gives an ancestry breakdown and what's called trait reports. And then for another $100, you get the health and ancestry services plus health-related reports. And then there's a 23andMe membership system, and throughout the year you will be getting additional specific health-related reports delivered for an additional $29 per year. So the trait service, this is the service level that I have. It's a comprehensive ancestry breakdown. It covers more than 2,000 geographic regions where your ancestors could have come from. Built into it is a family tree builder, and it allows you to build a family tree database with the connected people that you will find in 23andMe. It provides trait reports on 30 or more topics, some that you would never have thought of. And then there's the DNA relative finder. And for me, that's most beneficial feature of the service. Now, some of the ancestry reports here, they're listed. There's several of them with asterisks after the name. Those are what are known as the health reports. Those are the ones that require the additional $125 payment. But they have a whole slew of other types. One is called Neanderthal, and the other one is an ability to match musical pitch. I'm going to talk just a tiny bit about them. Now, something about me I really didn't need to know. The report came back and said, "Hey, Ray, you have more Neanderthal DNA than 68% of other customers." This means that Neanderthals were prehistoric humans who interbred with modern humans before disappearing about 40,000 years ago. And they go on to tell me that I've inherited a small amount from ancestors. Out of the variants that they've tested, 251 trace back to Neanderthals. The good news is, altogether, my Neanderthal ancestry accounts for less than 2% of my DNA. And then the ability to match a musical pitch. You would think with all the music I do, this would be easy for me, but it's not. I'm sure I'm in the 47% that cannot match, rather the 53% that cannot match a musical pitch. It says I'm about equal chances of being able to or unable to. Now, here's a surprise. I was baptized, received communion, made my confirmation, and was married in the Catholic Church, only to find out now that my DNA suggests almost 30% of my ancestry is Ashkenazi Jewish. The Ashkenazi Jewish, that refers to the Jews primarily from Central and Eastern Europe, who now mostly reside in North America. So this is what the chart will show, and it looks at your ancestry. And again, mine is about 100% Europe. Northwestern European, British, and Irish, which I
Did we lose the sound, Ray?
We lost the sound.
did. No, still no sound.
No.
No,
All right,
we hear you.
I'm gonna read it then. Let me just. All right, can you hear me now?
Yep, you're
We
fine.
hear-
Uh, all right, here's a true story. So I'm pointing out that my situation is different because I was adopted. So none of the information is going to relate to any of my Baxter relatives. But in the 1990s, I actually met my birth parents and have had contact over the years with brothers and sisters. So I went from being an only child to having 8 brothers and sisters. Now, last year, 23andMe, I got a private message contacted by a young man named Brandon. He was on my list as a first cousin, about 8% of shared DNA, but I had no idea who he was. So I learned from talking with Brandon that he was raised by his birth mother, but did not know who his birth father was. So I started comparing the DNA with the other relatives in 23andMe, and it was easy to determine that he was on my birth father's side of the family. So after contacting my half sister and putting this puzzle together, we were able to determine that Brandon's birth father was my sister's cousin. So while Brandon's birth father had already passed away, there was enough information for Brandon to contact a half brother who are close in age and live less than 100 miles apart. So mentioning that I was adopted, I wanted to give something back to the adoption community. So shortly after I moved to Arizona, I applied for it, took the training and the testing, and was ultimately certified by the Arizona Supreme Court as a confidential intermediary. Later, I was elected actually to the Confidential Intermediary Board. So this certification gave me access to sealed adoption records, and I could use my investigative skills to help find out where they were and reunite adult adoptees with their birth parents, provided I had written permission from both. That was very important to always have that written permission. So over the 9 years that I performed this service, I reunited dozens and dozens of people, and I like to think I truly changed people's lives. So today, some states continue to not allow anyone to look at the sealed adoption records. Others have opened them up to adult adoptees, but many are in the middle, like Arizona, where they use a third party. So I want to let you know that I've also signed up for Ancestry.com last year rather. And when I get that information in the coming weeks, I will do a follow-up to this, showing you how Ancestry and 23andMe either differ or are the same. So this is almost going to end now. I'm a little bit ahead. Let me stop sharing in a second.
Good morning, it's Ron Brown with Tech for Senior with another tutorial. This time it's going to be about, does a Chromebook have a hard drive? Now I have a favor to ask. Please click the like if you like this video. It really helps other people coming along to find it and enjoy it. And also, if you want to support the channel and help people like myself who are making these videos, please click the subscribe button. Thanks so much. Let's get on with the video. Now, what do you need to know about your Chromebook and your memory storage or hard drive? Absolutely nothing. This should not be a purchase consideration. Let the engineers design the hard drives and also just go and enjoy your Chromebook. Your Chromebook's going to work fast. You're not going to have any problems with your hard drive, and it doesn't matter which one you get. So just go and buy a Chromebook. There are lots of other purchase considerations that you need to do, but not as a hard drive. However, since you're here, if you want to watch the video, what I'm going to talk about in this video is a lot of people ask me why your Chromebook has such a small hard drive. What is really the RAM versus storage in a Chromebook? Can you add extra memory? And what's the best type of storage memory to add? And how do you find how much memory you're using anyway on your Chromebook? It's a little bit different than a PC. And then we're going to get to the final segment, which I don't want anyone to watch. There's going to be a big stop sign, and only people who are real techies should watch the very last segment of this, because I'm going to get into some really complicated stuff. So let's get on with the video and see what we can do. All right, so you probably all are aware there's two types of hard drives. There is the one on the left side that you will see, and this is our traditional hard drive, which has spinning platters. It has a little arm that goes back and forth, and it read-writes the information on those platters. You probably all understand that. On the right hand, you have what we call an SSD, which is a solid-state hard drive. This is where there's no moving parts. All your data is stored on the chips and the electronics in this, but there are no moving parts. Now, what is interesting though is if you go back to our spinning drive on the left-hand side, you'll see that the cost of a 500 gigabyte spinning drive is around $45 at Best Buy. Now, Best Buy is going to make a profit on that of about 30%. There's then going to be a distributor that's going to make money. There's then going to be shipping, handling. What is the actual cost of making that particular hard drive? Well, in actual fact, it's under $10. So when you buy your $1,000 laptop PC and you decide that you're going to put a 500 gigabyte spinning drive in, you are basing all your data on a piece of equipment that costs $10 to make. Now that little spinning thing that's going along there and those platters that are spinning a bazillion miles a second, that little arm that's going back and forth, and you're basing all those moving parts on something so cheap as $10. That's why we always say back up, back up, back up, because us techies know those drives fail incredibly at an incredibly high rate. So fortunately for you, you don't have to worry, because Chromebooks have never had spinning drives. They have never will have spinning drives. And let's just feel sorry for all those PC people that have spinning drives and all those problems, because we have Chromebooks and we don't have those problems because we have SSDs. Or do we? Let's get on. All right, let's talk about memory versus storage. Chromebooks have RAM memory in them, and most Chromebooks you buy will have either 4 or 8 gigabytes of RAM. RAM's not upgradable. The engineers figure it all out to make it simple for you. Because the Chromium operating system is such a tiny operating system and so efficient, we generally don't need as much RAM as we did for PCs. When you know those horrible Windows 10 PCs things we used to have, well, you just don't have to worry about that anymore. So it's not a big consideration. What you get will work just fine. As the Chromebooks have become more mainstay now, and we're seeing faster processors such as i5 and i7 processors, you will be seeing more RAM come in. But generally it doesn't matter. The engineers figure it all out. Then we come down to the CPU. The CPU could be, certainly is a wide range of CPUs, and we're not going to talk about that in this presentation. As I said, Chromebooks really are mainstay computing now, so you can get pretty powerful Chromebooks. But what we are going to talk about today, as I said, is your hard drive, and this is, again, not a big consideration because they're all about the same and they all work well, right? So, what is this all about? eMMC, Embedded Multimedia Card. The eMMC is an embedded multimedia card. Now this is a flash memory plus a controller. And this is all put on this little chip and packaged down into about 32 by 24 millimeters in size. It's an itty bitty little thing that fits on the end of your finger. And this is basically the hard drive that's in most of your Chromebooks. It's also the hard drive that's in most of your cell phones and tablets. And this is called eMMC memory. Now, why do we use this as a memory form? Well, the number one reason is it's cheap. It's really cheap. Now, you all probably know about the Pixel phone. I have a Pixel 3 that I paid $800 for. And many of you bought the Pixel 3a for $300. And you're laughing at me because they both run the same speed. And you're saying, well, Ron, why is there such a big difference in price? Well, the Pixel 3 actually has an SSD in it. The Pixel 3a has an eMMC memory chip in it. So it is much, much cheaper to make eMMC memory. And that is why you find it in the cell phones and tablets that we have today. Is it as fast as an SSD? We'll talk about that in a minute. So when you buy your Chromebook, you'll have often a choice between eMMC memory or having a solid state drive. And is that a consideration? And the answer to that is no. Well, sort of. So eMMC memory can work just as fast and go as fast as a solid state drive. But I want you to think a bit about like this. I want you to think about eMMC memory as sort of one-lane traffic. And to keep the speed up, we limit the data moving sort of over one lane. Whereas a solid state drive, I want you to think of as a 4-lane highway with lots of traffic moving up and down at the same speed as the one lane. So with an SSD, we can move larger amounts of data at the same speed as an eMMC. So what does that all mean to you? Well, not a lot. I mean, in practicalities with a Chromebook, they're all going to run fast. They're going to run great. All right. If you are a power user and a very high end, suppose you're doing a lot of video graphics, you're maybe got 15, 20 tablets open or tabs in your browser open, or you're moving very large files, then yes, there may be some consideration when you're purchasing your Chromebook to get an SSD. But for most people, it isn't going to make a difference. So it really doesn't necessarily have to be a purchase consideration for you. All right, some of you, when you go to purchase a Chromebook, get a little bit concerned because of the size of the hard drive in your Chromebook. You see that it may be only 30 gigabytes, and you think, that's a bit weird. So what's with all that? Well, we've talked in other videos about the concept of Chromebooks and how the data that you're going to save is really in Google Drive or in the cloud. So you really don't need much in the way of a hard drive, and certainly a 30 gigabyte or 60 gigabyte hard drive is perfectly adequate. But if you want to add more, it's real simple to do. And all that you have to do is add an SD card. Now, I was going to say this morning when I was making this video that all Chromebooks have SD card slots, and you can just simply plug an SD card into it. And I went and looked on my Pixelbook, and it doesn't have an SD slot. So I'm going to tell you that probably 95% of Chromebooks have SD slots, and you just put a card in, but there's probably some like my Pixelbook that don't. Now, I'm going to show you a brief video on just how easy it is to put a card in. This is one I made. This is my one of my first Chromebooks. This is the Samsung Chromebook, one of the first ones that was out. And you'll see I just open the gate at the bottom, and then we'll just slide that little SD card in the slot. I think that was a micro SD card. Now, if you look at these cards, they are super cheap. You'll see 128 gigabyte was 40 bucks, 512, $90, and you can even get a terabyte. I mean, if you're really worried, you can buy a terabyte card and stick it in, and that was, I think, $279. So lots and lots of things that you can memory. It's cheap. You can just add it if you want. Not a big deal. My advice is don't get an SD card when you first purchase your computer. It's something you can add later. It's not a big deal. You most likely won't need it. Now, you can also add memory through the USB port, and there are a number of different options in that. You'll see, now I sort of have some suggestions for you. On the left side, you'll see a 128 memory flash drive. Now, the thing I like about this is when you plug it in, it sits right in the pretty much flush with the chassis of your computer. And the same thing with the one just below that by SanDisk. These are easy. You can leave them plugged in. You don't have to take them out. The one on the right-hand side, I wouldn't recommend getting. Those are real old technology, and they're fairly long and protrude out from your computer. You can't really carry your computer around with those in, so you have to take it out and put it back in. The ones on the left side, you can just leave them plugged in all the time. So if you want to use those and expand your memory, and you don't want to put maybe you don't have an SD card slot in your computer, then you can certainly use one of those external flash drives. Now, Chromebooks are phenomenal if you want to attach any devices. You can attach unlimited number of devices, and they all work really well. You probably will want to get one of the adapters that I've shown you in the picture here. I have 3 or 4 of these and use them. These are adapters that plug into either the Type-C USB port on your Chromebook. Remember, some Chromebooks will only have Type-C USB ports, and this is an example of an adapter that you can plug anything into here. On the end, you'll see it's got a cable connection for an Ethernet. You'll see there are a number of USB ports and an HDMI port on this particular adapter, and you would just take the other end, which is a type C, plug it in to your Chromebook, and then you could plug all those other peripheral devices in. And if you wanted to put another adapter on, you could plug another adapter into this and another adapter and keep going. Chromebooks will plug, you can plug anything into a Chromebook. Great, great machines for that. And of course, you can also add a external hard drive for your Chromebook if you want. And this is the one that I just purchased. This is the SanDisk 2 terabyte SSD that I just purchased couple of weeks ago. It's extremely fast. I want you to notice, for the techies at the very end, I want you to notice this NVMe in this particular hard drive, and we'll talk a little bit about that at the end. Anyway, unbelievable expansion that you can do, and so I would just wait though and see if you need it, because probably you won't. All right, in this video, I'm going to show you how to check the hard drive space on your Chromebook. It's a little bit different than a Windows 10 machine with File Explorer, but let me show you how it does. If you look at the bottom of the screen, you'll see my cursor is on the Files app on your Chromebook. Let's see what we do when we click the Files app. Now this is going to open up the file. We're going to come up, and you'll see here it says that we have 74.9 gigabytes. If we click this, this will bring up our menu, and we'll be able to see how much storage we have. But let's click out of this, and let's start. I want to go back to, there we go. Let's come back now, and we're going to come over to our settings menu. We're going to click this. We're going to come up to settings, okay? And we're going to come over in settings. We're going to come down, and we're going to click storage management. And this brings you to the same menu. So now on my Pixelbook, you'll see that I have 53.1 gigabyte in use, and I have 74.9 available. Okay, folks, this is where you have to stop. Whoa! I don't want anyone going forward into the next few slides unless you're techies, all right? And the reason is because Chromebooks are simple. The concept's simple, they operate perfectly, and I don't want to confuse you or try to make this complex. But there are some things that need to be said for the techie group that's interested in some of the new technologies coming along. So if you're not really versed in technology, cover your eyes and put your fingers in your ears and don't watch the next few slides, all right? Okay, good. All right, now if we look at the new hard drives that are coming out, I want to talk to you about two solid-state drives. Of course, we have the traditional solid-state drive, but now we have the M.2 solid-state drives. Now, what is an M.2 solid-state drive? Well, you'll see that in the bottom slide here. And this is, again, it's a solid-state drive, but it's much smaller. And it plugs directly into the motherboard through a bus in your computer, on your computer motherboard. And I'll show you a little video of that in a minute. These take up less power, they can be faster, and are of course cheaper to produce. So we're going to see these come along in the next year, and you'll start to see Chromebooks coming in with M.2 drives, and you're going to wonder, what the heck is that? But these are solid state drives. So I'm going to show you a little video now on the putting of a M.2 drive into a motherboard. Also, no, it doesn't require any cable and plugs directly in, okay? But remember, both types of these drives require a bus. It requires some sort of connection from the drive into the motherboard. We'll talk about that in a second. So I hope you enjoyed that little video. That's how there's no cables attached. It's not like like a solid state drive, an SSD, where you often apply and attach a cable to connect it in. Now, the next part I want to talk about is NVMe. And remember, when you looked at that SanDisk SSD I bought, it said it had NVMe. What's NVMe? Well, non-volatile memory express is a protocol, not any physical thing. And that's what we call NVMe. And this is a protocol that we use, and it actually takes, now we have two types of buses on there. We have a SATA bus and we have a PCIe. Now the PCIe is the fastest way of transferring data from your computer onto the hard drive. And what NVMe is a protocol in which it uses the very fast PCIe to actually accelerate the transfer of data, and it can make it extremely fast. So here's the deal. Remember, M.2 is based on a form factor, the size and shape of the drive. That's when we say it's an M.2. So there's two scenarios here. You could have the traditional SSD that we saw in the picture, and it could be connected either to the motherboard through a SATA bus or a PCIe. Obviously, PCIe will be faster. Because SSDs have been around for a while, it could be connected either way. The connection and the protocol used to this could be NVMe, but it wouldn't be any faster if the SSD that you put in, unless it used the PCIe, it wouldn't be any faster with the NVMe protocol if it used the old SATA. Now we come down to the M.2 drive. Again, when you connect an M.2 drive, it is most likely that it will be connected through PCIe because it's a newer form factor, and it likely will be, the motherboard will have designed so there'll be a PCIe bus on there. And then the NVMe protocol that they're going to use will make this extremely fast. And that's what you're starting to see on drives when you're purchasing them now. Okay, that's the techie stuff all over with. And we're going to get to the summary slide now. So in summary, we've talked about why Chromebooks have small hard drives. We talked a bit about RAM versus storage memory. We talked about how you could add extra storage to your Chromebook. We talked about how you find out how much memory you have available on your hard drive. And then we talked about some of those new M.2 drives that are going to be coming into Chromebooks. So hopefully you've enjoyed the video as much as I had making it. And please, if you would just help other people see this video, click the like and support the channel by subscribing. It's Ron Brown, Tech for Seniors. We'll see you again.